I'm going to give a quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to our presenters who are coming to us from Wraparound Services of Hudson County. So let me give just a quick background on why I personally am so interested in this topic and why I think everybody else should be as well. So this is a quick description of the residential services that are available today in New York State through OPWDD. There are still a small handful of people who are in specialty hospitals, a small handful who are in institutional 24/7 ICFs. But the vast majority of people who are getting residential services are sitting in supervised 24/7 IRAs. And some of those people, perhaps most of those people, need that level of service, but there's also plenty of people who I believe could benefit from less intensive services. And the advocacy over the past 10, 20 years has been mostly about how can we get more of this? How can we get more 24/7 supervised IRA? Because there's a tremendous shortage. And what I would submit for people to consider is that the way to get more of this is to move, even if there's only 1,000 people in here who could benefit from instead wraparound services or a live-in caregiver. If we could move 1,000 people into these programs, that frees up 1,000 beds. And I know there's tremendous effort every year to try and get 80 more opportunities in supervised IRAs. If we could focus our attention somewhere else, that might actually create more opportunities. So it's with that context, I will stop my share and turn it over to the good folks from Wraparound Services of Hudson County to talk about their program.
Morning, Jim. How are you today? Thanks for having us. I'm happy to join the meeting. My name is Jerry Dornwind. I'm the CEO of Wraparound Services in the Hudson Valley. I'm joined by Kelly Creswick, who is our Director of Wraparound Community Services, one of our programs that you've asked us to talk about. So the program, and I'm going to focus because of the time constraints, just specifically on the program. The agency itself provides many of the services that you were just talking about throughout the Hudson Valley, and we also have an 80-person school for preschool through adulthood. So the program we're talking about is called Wraparound Community Services, and what this really is an evolution of some thinking that a bunch of us here decided to really do a deep dive into back in 2015. We looked at how many, the simple concept was we were talking about how many people we think, if they were given intensive supports, could move from IRAs to life on their own. And the second phase, the second idea was how many folks are stepping up to residential that with intensive community supports would not need to do so. So with that simple tenet, we went about the process of building a BIP grant. We applied. We were given a demonstration project. The program is now 4 years old. We were past proof of efficacy. Broad strokes, there are about 80 people participating in the program today, spread out through 3 counties. When we piloted the program, we worked with 2 agencies, one in Nassau County, one in Orange County, to show that the model would work in urban, suburban, and rural settings. But at this point, this program stands alone as we are past the demonstration phase. So the general idea was, again, with intensive community supports, we're going to show that individuals who are on priority 1 lists and on application to go to an IRA, that we come in and work with that to de-escalate the crisis and allow the person to remain in the community. And the second goal is to keep people who are in IRAs, to allow them an opportunity to experience life on their own. So our first slide really shows those 3 services. Okay, so the program operates with 3 distinct services that are very much linked together, and we provide home of my own services. Go to the next slide. Supportive family services is where we come into family situations where there's high risk for placement. Think start teams, critical cases where the individual with disabilities is on priority 1 referral list for going to residential, and families really burned out, tired. And we come in and work with the family and try to help everybody reset their emotional batteries so that the individual can live home with intensive supports. Home of My Own is individuals who are living in the community at this time that are at risk for placement in IRAs. So we will get a referral from the DRO that an individual is facing eviction, has had some community issues or challenges, and we come in and begin to work with that person in order to allow them to remain in the community and avoid residential care. And the third is preparation for life on my own. This is where we go into residentials to IRAs and begin working with individuals, teaching them. Really, the goal of that program is to help the person prepare for life on their own, living in the community. And we'll go into detail about that, how we exactly do that in a minute. Kelly, let's see that.
So the WCS program, we are a program that's trying to provide alternative placements to residential. We know the cost of supervised IRAs, and we understand that by providing intensive supports through ComHab services, we are saving the state some money. So that always helps. The 3 programs stand alone. However, they are very fluid in that we move from the Home of My Own services to the supportive home services to the preparation for life on my own services. Occasionally we start with someone who might be in the supportive family services, but they then move to preparation for life on my own services, and then eventually they get to the Home of My Own services. They share a common staffing model between the programs, but it depends on what the person needs and the fit for what their strengths and weaknesses are.
So why did we choose to do this? Well, one is we felt that this was kind of an innovation that was needed in the array of OPWDD services. The program really, we felt, one, offers a choice, and it really does offer a community-based option to residential care. So at this point today, we, as I said, have 80 people in the program. There are about 18 to 20 that have stepped down from IRAs. And many who are still living with families who were priority 1 referrals at the time we began working with them. To date, over 4 years, only 4 people have had to move to, when they moved into the program, have had to go back to residential care, almost all of them due to medical fragility, to the point where they couldn't walk, without assistance, that kind of thing. It really did need 24-hour staffing. So we've had a long run of being able to prove that the program is able to safely provide intensive services and allow the person to live on their own. The program offers a high degree of flexibility. It is up to the individual we're working with to choose who they're going to live with, or if they're going to live alone, where they're going to live. One of the processes as we begin to prepare somebody to leave an IRA is to take them to communities in the county and let them pick where they want to live. We offer a lot of collaboration with community providers. So we build a circle of support and then act as kind of act as the battery to provide energy to the community supports to keep them active. But oftentimes in crisis, what we see is a lot of the community supports have fallen by the wayside, or persons no longer participating, and we really come in and start to charge that back up and get it going.
We also offer 24-hour support, which is where that safety comes in. So for the safety aspect, when we meet families for the first time, talking about their family member living independently, living in their own apartment, their first concern is always going to be safety, whether it's their physical safety or their mental health safety or just the community safety aspect. So we offer that 24-hour support so that the person living in their own apartment can call someone on our team 24 hours a day. If it's the middle of the night and they are having symptoms or they can't breathe or they fell, We're there to support them. It may not always be a physical where, we may not always have to come to them, but at least we're there to support them with what to do. If it's calling or 911, or if it's calling a neighbor to go and check on them. So that safety aspect is something that we provide with the 24-hour support. And our ease of use is we connect with everyone else in that person's world, between the families and the care managers, and we'll get into that later about what that circle of support looks like.
So the other thing we talked about was that the program is managed care friendly. One of the things when we developed the program, we had an eye on how managed care would look at this, and how do we fit this model into traditional funding streams for OPWDD. The program operates when someone starts working with us in the program. We're usually between 20 to 25 hours worth of combat per week. We see that decrease over time, clearly, and we'll go into that in a minute. So one of the things people ask us a lot about is, well, what's the cost savings? What's the difference? At 20 hours a week, the average, the program would cost about $43,680. The average IRA in New York State at this point is $326 a day. So they're just, if you're looking at that, just at that aspect, there's about a $75,000 differential between the cost of the wraparound program and working with the traditional IRA. By no means do we look at this program thinking it is a fit for everyone. What this is think of this as a continuation of an array of services that can be provided under OPWDD certifications that allow for some innovation and allow for an option for some folks that are able to do this. What we are doing is proving that there is a wide range of individuals who can participate in the program, despite having both mental health and developmental disability challenges. Supportive home services really relieves the physical and emotional stresses placed on a person with disabilities. The first thing that we do is we come in, we find that we're working with an energized situation, is that we give people space. We'll come in and work with the individual and talk to the other family members about taking time for themselves, making sure they have time to recharge their emotional batteries, and then we see a calming of the situation leading to stability. Home of my own. We believe that people have the right to live in integrated community-based settings. So initially, one of the things we discussed was building apartment complexes, and then doing that kind of large housing. As we began to work with the folks that were participating in the program, we found they really didn't want that. They wanted to pick their communities that they were going to live in on their own and be fully integrated. So that's what we did. It took a little bit more time, but we find that as part of the process of moving out of the IRA, having control over being where you're going to live is certainly a confidence boost. We get asked questions about staffing. So consistent with our person-centered plan, the residential space is fully in control of the person with disabilities, and we call that, we really talk a lot about a forever home with them. While the staffing may change, the person remains in the home with coordinated supports. We do not have a lot of folks moving out of their apartments once they move in. Probably the number one thing we'll go in and work with people who are having a tough time is eviction. We have to undo the eviction, the issue in the program. We did pretty well with that. When we asked what are the keys to having a successful program, we went and read. When we started the program, we went to 2 DDROs and read all 58 of their priority 1 individuals who are at high risk. We had a high degree, there was mental health. But from that, what we deduced was that there were a significant number that we could stop from needing to go into residential care, and that was really our first group that we worked with. We just kept whittling down at that group of 58. The key learning piece to this was that we realized that the number one thing, the most important thing, is relationship. If the person that is working with us feels very strongly and connected to the program, we know that they'll call early in the process of having a challenge or an issue, and that allows us the time to get in and work with them. So it's one of the things right from the beginning that we spent a lot of time on. Preparation for life of my own, it takes us about a year to have somebody go from us starting to work with them in an IRA, then move on to life on their own. And why does it take that long? Depending on how long someone's lived in an IRA, there are a lot of external controls that we have to relearn and create internal decision making. Think about life in an IRA, right? Staff are the ones that kind of set the schedule for who gets up in the morning, what time is breakfast, what time is program starts. So when you look at life on your own, when you're living in an apartment, you have to get up in the morning. You have to be able to decide what you want to eat. You have to decide how you're going to get ready for the morning routine and get things moving ahead. If you don't spend a lot of time really preparing the person for that, when they move out, what you're faced with is a high degree of anxiety, and that can disrupt the placement pretty quickly. So we spend a lot of time building internal controls and internal decision-making processes, and also getting them to trust us, so that when the person moves in, they're picking up the phone and calling us as they become anxious. And we get a lot of phone calls the first month that we're working with somebody. Somebody moving out of an IRA, I don't care how well you prepare them, Kelly is getting 3 calls a day, 4 calls, and that's totally okay. We're good with that.
4 calls an hour.
4 calls an hour. Okay, good.
So some of our common program features, it's very individualized, and as Jerry was saying, it's all about choice. So we have some people who, when it comes to their services, they want 40 hours a week of ComHab, and we have some people who are okay with just 5. We do try to offer that 15 to 20 hours a week, because we find that the more support they have, the more successful they are, but that is completely up to them. We have people who want to live in the middle of the woods, and then we have people who want to live in a more apartment setting where there's neighbors and people for them to communicate with and socialize with. And again, that's completely up to them. They choose where they want to live. We have planned an emergency intake. A lot of the times with our crisis cases, we're getting those referrals for people who need help today, not in a month when we finally get the approval from OWDD or when we can finally get the paperwork together. We are in a practice of, as soon as we get that phone call that this person needs support in their home, whether it's the family's home or their own apartment, we swoop in probably within, I would say, 5 days. We're in their place, assisting them, regardless of the background documentation. Intensive in-home supports, again, we have that 24-hour on-call system, which is myself, coordinators, DSPs are a part of that, and our community liaison. That position's purpose is to support people with connecting with doctors and therapists and DSS and Social Security and HEAP and SNAP, and that person's role is to ensure that any community resource available to them, they're quickly getting connected to. We have the DSP and home services, which we said. We coordinate and communicate with other services this person may have. That could be job coaching or day hab. Sometimes, I think you had mentioned the people who are in, now I can't remember what it's called. No, but they're crisis services where people come in to help them start. Thank you. The START program. So we coordinate and work with anyone that person has support from. We help setting up therapy for people and their families. We know a lot of the times we're walking into very challenging situations where some of the issues aren't just the person's weaknesses and disabilities, but it's also the whole family has, sometimes they have some deep-rooted issues going on, and so we're there to help fix that as a unit, because we understand that if the family is in a good place, then that person can maintain their success. And we support with transportation to any sort of medical appointments. We have a lot of people who have issues with Medicaid transportation, and that causes a lot of anxiety. Sometimes that requires ride sharing. Sometimes the Medicaid transportation is late or they don't show up at all. And so we want to mitigate that anxiety altogether, and we'll support with transporting to any sort of medical services. Throughout all of the 3 programs that we offer, there are some shared goals. We want to address the needs for the referral right off the bat. Where is the support needed most? Is it that they don't have money and they don't have food stamps? Okay, let's fix that first, and then we can move on to all of the other issues that need to be addressed. But what are the, very first and foremost is what is the main issue and how do we help? We like to create a strong relationship between the WCS team and the person and their family. I think that the most important aspect of the program is creating that bond that they trust us. We're here to support them. We're not here to judge their situation and their living environment. We are only here to help you. We want to improve the capacity for caregivers to provide support. So we will work with just the families and parents, and not have the person involved. If they need meetings and training specifically for them to be able to help their child, we can provide that as well. Person-centered services, I think that goes without saying. And we want to prevent unnecessary residential placement or get someone out of residential placement that's not working for them. You can see our circle of support graph. So this is kind of what I was saying before, how we really want to strengthen the circle of support, because it's not just us that's going to support the person, but it is the WCS staff, the parents, their siblings, any other grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins in the area, church members, or if they volunteer at the local ASPCA, they're part of the circle of support. Any other services they've received, such as Semper Day have, any other caregivers, OPWDD is a big proponent of this, and any other family and friends. So we include everybody in that circle of support.
So we look at the program, and we have what we really hold true to our core principles for the program. As you can see, the program takes on a lot. It is very much individualized and very much flexible in terms of what we can work with and how we work. There is a lot of voice and choice. We really emphasize the person participating with us in the program is making a lot of decisions. We have to build the self-confidence to be able to go live on your own. And one of the ways is by allowing choice. We are team-based at every step, whether it's team-based using our community resources or a team-based meeting as a group to figure out how best to provide a service. There is quite a bit. It was a heavy dose of team-based. We focus on strength-based, and this is something that I think is very important. We are not interested in reducing problem behaviors. Not interested in it 100%. We do not focus on that. We're not interested in it. What we're interested in is increasing the skills they need to be successful, right? So we focus on increasing strengths and increasing skills. We talk that way. We will not talk about, I wish John would, we're working with John and he tends to make stuff up, so we're going to have to reduce the amount of time that he's not telling the truth. Well, no, we want to focus on how often he's accurate in his communication, right? And we constantly focus on building strengths. Very, very important. It creates think about it, if you're constantly talking about increasing strengths and the success they're having and working on those, you're constantly in a positive mode of talk and communication, which then strengthens relationships and allows you to intervene during crises. There's a lot of collaboration that you need to do in order to run this program and do this. So you have to build strong community ties. And the person participating has to be able to invest in those ties along with us as we go through. We believe in a lot of natural support. So again, we focus on creating a big circle of support. And we focus on using communities. Instead of trying to do all the work ourselves with regard to treatment, medical, and therapy, very early on, we decided the program initially in its model, when I was writing the first design of this, had a therapist in it. We really quickly realized that it was much more important to have the person going into the community and participating in therapy with DSP supports as being able to exercise and use a community support on their own. So that's what we did. There's a lot of cultural competence that has to go on, so we keep that in mind as we're working with families, a very diverse group of families. Probably the most important core principle is unconditional. Kelly says it, and our team is amazing at this. And we are going to work with you. No judgment on what's happened in the past. We want to move forward, and we're going to be successful. That is a very important part of this. Outcome based. So we do track number of folks that stepped up. We do track costs. We do track average number of ComHab hours that we utilize, so that we can begin to think about, when managed care does come, we can talk about that in a way that is managed care friendly. Our program model is very simple, and Kelly will go into that in a second.
So for our program model, I went into this a little bit with a circle of support, but just to break down the WCS team, we have a program director, we have multiple program coordinators, we have a team of 40 DSPs, and then we have that community liaison. So we equally share the responsibilities of keeping this person safe and successful in their setting or with their families. Our core services for the program, we have DSP services that bill community rehabilitation traditionally. We have staff action plans that list out the person's goals and valued outcomes, and that the DSPs go in and work on those specific goals for the person. Again, that 24-hour support, the family inclusion, if the person is willing and allows us to work with their families, we include them every step of the way. However, we definitely have people in the program who do not want their parents involved, and that's okay as well. That circle of support I mentioned, the day services I mentioned, you know, connecting with the other services the person is part of. We also have access to adaptive equipment and environmental modifications. The agency has a trade program, so we can support the person in any sort of adaptive equipment they need, whether it's something like a wheelchair or a shower chair, to something like an alarm clock that is accessible to them, or a phone or a computer that's accessible to them. So we definitely get creative with that. And we hold monthly meetings with the program if changes they want to see. It's very person-centered. They come in and they create the agenda and they tell us what they want to talk about for the day. As long as we bring them a snack, they're happy to participate, and they enjoy telling us, like, well, I like when my DSP brings me out into the community, but I don't like when my DSP is on their phone. And so we listen to that, and we ensure that we're going back to their staff and changing the things that need to be changed. We also provide recreation and socialization services. Back before COVID, we every week had some sort of community event. Sometimes it would be held in our building where we'd be having like a bingo day, but a lot of times we had things out in the community. In the Hudson Valley, we are known for all of our historic sites. So going on tours, going to any parks, hiking, having barbecues. So anything to get people together, to make friends, form relationships. We were all about that. And our lessons learned. So through all of this, we're on year four to five. We've learned a lot of lessons about what works and what doesn't work. One of our big things is staff recruitment. So we're continuously recruiting new staff, recruiting staff that have experience. We found that hiring staff that have never worked in the field before wasn't always successful, because our ComHab staff, they're on their own. They're very independent. They have to have that autonomy of knowing what to do and how to interact with people and how to work on goals with them. So we find that by hiring staff that have that background experience, whether it's in an IRA or a DayHab or a SEM program, they're coming into the program with that core experience. When it comes to interviewing the staff, we like to hear that they are able to work with some challenging situations. So we ask them questions targeting that. And we find that with active recruitment, we're able to constantly refresh the staffing model. So sometimes we have someone who worked really well with a person for 6 months. And then after 6 months, they're both getting tired of each other. The person's tired of the staff is kind of getting burnt out from the person. So with that continual recruitment, we're able to replace and then change that staff who maybe is getting burnt out to a new person to work with. So that continual recruitment helps us.
Along with the part of the DSP interview, we don't work off of a list saying, okay, this is the next person. I mean, this person's on the waiting list. They're on the top of the list. They go into the next. They go to the next person. What we do is we pay attention. We match the DSP to the individual. So sometimes there may be an individual that's waiting longer than other folks because we don't have a good match. But we really believe strongly in fit and building relationships right from the beginning. We've learned that crisis assessment We have to get, when we start working with a family or an individual on their own, or even coming out of an IRA, the very first thing we learn and look at are antecedents. What are the early warning signs the person is in distress? And that's when we become masters at that and act on that, and as we call it, antecedent management. We act on that antecedent when we see it and really train on that so that we catch problems in their genesis. We talk about de-escalation training. We train on behavior management on one-on-one de-escalation training in the community. And that's, again, part of our antecedent management. And how and when to call for help. We train everyone on adequate homelessness as they need to. Mental health challenges. One of the things we've learned early on was that we don't get a lot of calls relating to the person's disability and needing services in a crisis or in an emergency. We get a lot of calls that are heavily weighted with mental health challenges, anxiety, depression. There are many diagnoses that we're working with out of our 80 guys in the program, and a lot of our phone calls have to deal with challenges associated more on the mental health side. You have to have a strong relationship with the DDRO. Our DDROs have been great to work with. They've been good partners. They understand that when we need, if we're working with somebody and a crisis happens, we need to move quickly to approve additional ComHab hours. They've been good with that. Obviously, we've had to prove that those are real problems that we're facing, and we've done a good job with that. ESPs need a good working cell phone and a vehicle to provide services. As I said, matching is important. And really working with the family and training the family on what we're doing and why we're doing it is important so that they're comfortable and allow us entry into the house. We really have to be respectful to families when we go into homes about their environment. And again, that's the non-judgmental piece. So we just gave you a ton of information about this program, but we want to keep it time sensitive, Jim. So I hope we covered everything you want us to cover.
Yeah, that's a fantastic run through. Really appreciate that. What I'd like to do is I'll exercise the facilitator's prerogative and ask you the first question. Suppose I'm a provider who's intrigued by what you've said and would like to do something like this in my area. How would I get started?
Well, so a couple of things. They certainly can contact us and we'll work with them to help them develop a program. We are in no way looking at this as being inclusive. We're the opposite. More than happy to give other agencies resources and the ideas on how to go do this. Really the first thing you need, Jim, is the organization needs to make sure it has a couple of certifications from OPWDD. You need ComHab R, you need ComHab. Probably a very good idea to be an ISS to have that contract. We also, and be rep payees. Yeah, all of those things are really important to have in-house to be able to do this well. It helps if you can get a trade contract, because what that is a adaptive equipment lending program, and it really does help when you run into an emergency situation that you have access to. We have 3,000 pieces of adaptive equipment that we can loan out, so it makes a big difference.
I did see a question about, someone typed it in, about how it's funded. So we're funded through community habilitation billing, straight through Medicaid. So all of our DSPs and the community liaison or the director and coordinators, if we're working one-on-one with that person, we're billing community habilitation. We ensure that their goals are inclusive of all of the things that we may be assisting them with. So that we're just straight funded by community habilitation.
And if we're in the IRAs, we build ComHab R. That's why you need, you need both of those certifications.
There was another question about medication oversight that I saw come in. Our community liaison, she will assist somebody with ensuring that they have their medications ordered, whether they're getting delivered, or ensuring that they're picking them up on time. She also can support with oversight of them filling their med box or calling to check in. Have you taken your medication today? That's where our adaptive equipment comes in handy, because we do have pill boxes that can alert us if the person hasn't taken their medication for the day. We'll get a call, or our community liaison will get that call. And so that is how we provide medication oversight.
So 24-hour support, obviously there is no ComHab billing when you're providing phone support in a crisis. But because we're allocated the hours and the way the program is staffed, we allow for that cost to be built into the $42 an hour we receive from ComEd.
There's a question about residents of Queens apply. So we cover 6 counties, and Queens, or any of the 5 boroughs aren't part of that. We cover Orange, Ulster, Putnam is probably the closest to Queens.
That's a long way.
Greene, Greene and Columbia, and Sullivan, I think.
And so what we would do is, if an agency was interested, again, this is to train an agency. We train 2 agencies to do this when we develop the program. It takes an agency a while to ramp up to be able to provide the service, but early on in the negotiations, as we began to present this to OPWDD as an program option, one of the things that we agreed to was that we would fit all of the funding into conventional funding streams, which is a little tricky. So that if another agency wanted to start it up, they would just need to get those certifications to provide the service. There's nothing in the program that requires a special rate or special.
I'm just wondering about the Nassau County Agency.
Yeah, so Nassau CP runs a version of this program. You can certainly get a hold of Nassau CP and to speak to them about their program.
Yeah, so there were a couple of clarifying questions, and then I'll open it up to. Right now I've got everybody muted, but one clarifying question was exactly how do you support the availability of the 24/7 crisis call line?
So our staff, we have the staff in the program coordinator, program director, and community liaison all have cell phones, and the individual has those numbers. They can call 24 hours a day and get a hold of us. The cost for that is built into the ComHab, the revenue that we get for providing the ComHab services.
Okay, so you build that cost into the day rate.
Correct. And what we find is that there's a lot of use of the emergency call early on. A year late, if you took our guys who've been in the program over a year, how often do they call at night?
Yeah, not often anymore.
Right. I think it really does. It really does. It's not as frequent as you think once you're with a group of folks over a year.
Okay, and then there's a question about sort of the limits of this program. Do you envision it as something that could provide support to someone who does need 24/7 arm's length supervision?
I think that we would be able to work with other community resources. We've had people who receive PCA services outside of their ComHab hours, and we just work with that agency to ensure that there's no gap in service. So we don't always provide the 24-hour DSP support, but we will work with other agencies to close those gaps.
Oh, so do you have someone who fits in that category in the program today?
I do, yeah. They receive services. Well, they don't have 24-hour support, but they do have PCA services outside of our support.
Okay, last question before I unmute is, are you willing to provide the slide deck?
The slide.
The slide, sure. I'll send it to you.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll get that on the Queens Council site. So I've provided everybody now with the ability to unmute yourself. So if people have a question.
I have a question.
Shoot.
I hope this is not too simplistic, but what brought you folks into being? That is to say, is it the lack of beds in the brick and mortar now, the 24-hour IRA, from agencies such as AHRC or YAI or, Jewish agencies? In other words, what brought you into existence? I understand you're funded by the state, but are you trying to fill the need of the fact that there are no more brick and mortar beds being built?
No. This really came out of the agency does a lot of really kind of interesting, innovative things with their programs. This literally, we were sitting in a room like this, and we had a discussion about the continuation of OPWDD services. And what kind of jumped out at us was what would happen if we thought about some kind of intensive in-home services program, not intensive prevention like they have in OCFS, but some kind of intensive in-home services program that really was a relationship-based strength-building process. You know, could we stop the need for people to go to residential? You know, some of the folks, or could we allow some of the folks living in residential stuff? You know, I wish I had a more complex answer. It was as simple as that. From that came a larger discussion, and I wrote the program model.
May I just follow up on that? Jim, may I follow up on that? Hello? Yes. I guess the follow-up is, and again, not to be at all critical, I think the work you're doing is great, but I'm just trying to understand in the scheme of things how you you know, came into how different are you from an agency such as YAI or OHEL or HRC, you know, with IRAs? I guess what brings this question to the forefront of my mind is Jim's initial comments about, in his graph, about the 24 IRAs, you know, being, if I understood him correctly, Jim's graph correctly, there's no beds. There are no beds, literally, almost no beds in the traditionally run agencies, the brick and mortar. And is that what you folks are addressing, you know, or meeting that need?
We really didn't come at it. We really don't come at it from a, we don't think we need, we have, let's say our agency operates IRAs and supportive work. There's a need for every level of program. One of the things that this program can do is that it can allow some of the folks living in IRAs to be able to live in the community, which then allows space in the IRA beds for people on waiting lists that need to get in that truly need 24-hour support.
Okay, and so we're getting feedback from someone else. Eleanor, I had muted you because I thought it was from you. I'm not sure if there's someone else who has a question.
Can you repeat that, what you said? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that last sentence? You said something about the 24-hour IRAs. I'm sorry, I lost that.
Are you talking?
Can you repeat that? Yes. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I don't think the program isn't looking to say we need IRAs. I mean, and what this looks at is there are some folks living in IRAs that can, with good support, step down from an IRA, then leaving beds for folks that truly need 24-hour support. Really, this program fits a niche, right? There really wasn't this little a space where we go back and look at folks living in an IRA and say, well, what about, you know, a standard, some kind of program model that really looks at this on a large scale basis and says, okay, how can we do this with conventional funding to move folks from IRAs who can do it onto life on their own? And it really is not, like I said, we believe that it fills a void in the system, in the scope of services in the system. That's how we look at this.
Thank you.
So I'll pause to see if there's any other questions for our guests from Wraparound Services of Hudson County.
I heard a question. I couldn't.
I think that's just somebody who's not actually muting themselves.
It's Lisa. Jim, I have a quick question. Just so I'm clear, so you don't really have any separate funding for the administrative coordination. You're just using the existing dollars that you're getting from ComHab or whatever OPW services you're already providing. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
That was one of the things early on as we were meeting. We went through, in 2015, we went through many interviews with OPWDD because if you imagine, there were two things that we were talking about. One was this is going to be, fit somewhere into the parameter of services. The second was risk, right? So OPWDD, and we had some real, how are you going to manage risk with folks that were living in a step down? So we had a lot of discussions about that and a lot of discussions about fact that whenever we designed, the program model had to fit within the current cost structure of OPW because they weren't going to create a new rate or they were create a new program model. So that's why we built it on the legs of ComHab-R, ISS, and so far so good.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How are placements handled? Are they handled through OPWD and the care manager, or can people go another way to get in?
So it's not so much a placement as a referral, because we don't handle placements into an IRA, but the referrals come directly from the care manager or OPWD, depending on the level of crisis. I think our high needs cases, they come directly from OPWDD, but either way, we'll take the referral. We also get families calling us directly because they've heard about the program, or people themselves calling us directly.
Right.
And then we'll just ask for the care manager's contact information to ensure we start that process of documentation in the background.
You ready?
And then a quick follow-up. What's the geographical limitation of who can come to the program?
At this point, furthest south that this program will go is Putnam County and Orange County. We would probably look at Rockland County based. But we are open to working with agencies to training them on this model down in New York City, and be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more quick question, and if you answered this, I'm sorry. How many people are you currently serving in this model?
80, about 80. About 80 of the 80. We probably, since the life of the program began, we're probably well over 110. Yeah. We have had only 4 folks that need to go up to a higher level of care. One was severely medically fragile and needed the supports. Another went to through hospital to a nursing home where he remains. Trying to do the other ones. Yeah, but again, very low number of folks who are in the program had to step up to a higher level of care.
Great, thanks.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our time, so I'll just check if there's one last question.
I can ask somebody else. May I ask another question?
I think there might be, Eleanor, I think there might be a couple of other people who also had questions. A couple of other people have unmuted themselves.
No worries.
So you should have the energy.
So 2 people have unmuted themselves. Was that on purpose to ask a question, or should we let Eleanor do it?
Yeah, I have no question.
Jim, this is Chris. I have a question.
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah. As I was listening to your presentation, and I did write a question. I know you guys do in Queens, but what other parts of counties are you also trying to do in the next future?
Well, we opened up last year. We opened up an Orange County office, so we began working with families in Orange County all the way in Rockland County. We began to work 2 years ago with Dutchess County and Putnam County. So we continue to expand the service county by county as we go forward. But again, one of the things that I would not for New York City. I would really like to see a New York City provider because there are regulatory challenges with that you run into with New York City that you want to make sure fit the model that you might not have upstate.
Second question, just to ask, since due to the coronavirus, how are you guys handling this at this time?
Great question. Great quote. Initially, we saw a dip in the number of units provided. We're seeing it come back up.
For our people who live independently and really needed the supports, it was business as usual. We ensured that people who lived on their own and needed support with grocery shopping and appointments and keeping their hygiene and the safety of their apartments up, we provide the same amount of hours of service as they were used to. We did see a lot of families choose not to have services at the time due to the safety reasons. And then we had a lot of people who lived in residential settings that Comp have our piece. Their residential placements were not allowing them to receive services. But we are seeing that open up again, which is we're happy to have.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I really want to thank you for making the time to present this to us today. People like to use the phrase a lot about a full range of service to meet the full range of need. And I think your pilot program represents something that could be an addition to the range of residential services that are available to this population. So appreciate you coming in today. And I'm gonna just throw it over to you to say goodbye. And then I think, Lisa, there's a couple of other pieces of Queen's business to account for, so I'll stop the recording for that.
Okay.
Thanks, folks, for having us. Take care. Be well.
Thank you so much.